So you have all of this information flying around, and yet the ability to make decisive decisions is even harder because there's so much noise and not enough signal.
Hi, I'm Eric Baxley, Chief Marketing Officer of Nobody Studios. I'm joined today by Barry O'Reilly, co-founder of Nobody Studios and author of a new book that just came out, Artificial Organizations. So I'm really excited to have you, Barry, here. Thanks for joining.
It's always great to hang out, Eric, whether we're building companies or talking about books. It's always fun, lively debate.
Absolutely. I'm here on the US East Coast. Barry's in Singapore. Always fun talking different time zones. Okay, let's just jump right in. I always like to know the why, right? Not just, hey, let's just jump into the book. Tell me what was the reason, the impetus, the reason for, sitting down and wanting to write a book?
Yeah, well, for me personally, it started literally at my desk at around midnight. And I was in that sort of place where, I was tired, but I was excited. My dinner was cold, sitting on the kitchen table. My family had gone to bed. I was working on a business case actually for one of the companies that we were thinking about building in the studio. And there was so much opportunity in front of me, but I was like, I'm not maximizing this. I'm hitting this sort of local maximum, if you will, about work, and it's frustrating. And it was sort of a little bit of an aha moment for me that I needed to figure out a different way to work. I'd built up a business where I was either working with senior Fortune 500 execs, helping them all over the world. The studio was in its infancy. We were starting to, literally get together as a team, talk about running a crowdfunding campaign. I had literally just finished writing on Learn. I was still doing lots of talking about that. So again, there was loads of great opportunity, but I was not able to leverage it. So, and at the same time, my family were sick of me because I was always working, so it was just one of those moments where I just sort of said, there's got to be a better way, and that was really probably my moment where I at the time just sort of sat there and said, right, I need to start understanding how I work, and then start the natural traits that get the best out of my work, the tasks that have the highest leverage for me, and then start looking at these tools that could potentially help me. And really that was sort of the aha moment, and really everything from there over the last sort of 5-6 years has just been me continually to augment as much as possible my best ways of working, my best natural ways of working, my human ways of working with machine intelligence to make me more informed, more prepared, and hopefully, more performant with the people I work with. And that was really the inspiration, really for just not even thinking of writing a book. I was just thinking about getting stuff done. And that's really where this all began.
That's too funny. I'm picking on some of your words just to play back. Your last few words was getting stuff done. I actually block off time. I don't know if you know this. I block off an hour or two each day in the morning and afternoon, and it's called GSD. Get, stuff done. And, but
I'm sure the S is for stuff. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just trying to keep it G-rated here, man. So anyway, but that's my initials. In fact, my prior CEO was, you meet with GSD a lot. Who is that? I was like, I'm just getting shit done. So anyway, Barry, back to your point. I think that's a natural desire for many, right? You said that earlier. How do I do better, right? How do I get better informed? How can I become more efficient, more effective, right? And so with these, all these AI tools, which by the way, I wake up every day or every evening, I'm up late at night just experimenting with all the latest creations of the day, which just negated, all advancements in the last month or year. So it's crazy world we live in. Anyway, but I'm going to pick off one question from the book, or, you say decisions are getting slower, not better. What's happening despite more AI and more data?
Well, that's sort of the problem, isn't it, right? Like, we've more information than ever before. We've more dashboards, more data, and yet it does feel for most people like decisions are getting slower, not faster. And, the promise that these tools were going to sort of amplify everything that we do and make it better, for most people, it's not living up to that promise. And, for me, that's sort of disappointing, but it's also because people are going about this in the wrong way. And people are overwhelmed, right? Like, you think if you're a Fortune 500 leader right now, you are just flooded with information. You have people who are generating reports because the cost of generating output is nigh on zero. But what happens is people generate these reports, skim them, and then they push them to other people to do the real creative work of reviewing the quality of it a lot of the time. So you have all of this information flying around, and yet the ability to make decisive decisions is even harder because there's so much noise and not enough signal. So two of the real key metrics, certainly that we talk about in the book, is this idea of decision velocity and decision advantage. So first of all, decision velocity, like how frequently are you actually making decisions? When you come to meetings, do you show up prepared? Do you actually execute what needs to be done, i.e. the decision, and do you move on? Some of the meetings we aim for in the studio, they might be booked for half an hour, but if we make the decision in 6 minutes, I'm out of here. I'm on to getting work done now. Versus these meeting-centric cultures where it's booked for an hour, everybody shows up, they're trying to remember, what did we talk about last week? They're reconstructing context. That takes 20 minutes. They sort of half debate what they think are the information points or the data points to support. Actually, what are we trying to do? Oh, we're trying to make a decision. That's right. Oh, there's time up. Okay, let's get back together next week, and then we'll definitely make a decision around this then, and that is latency, where, again, decision advantage paired with this decision velocity are teams that show up prepared, that have the information that is important to make the decision available. Teams have probably even pre-read it. They're primed to meet to make decisions. So really what you start to see, and we experience this a lot in the studio, even simple things like our weekly stand-up, is that ahead of our weekly stand-up, every single person on the team has provided information about what they've accomplished this week, what they plan to do next week, any blockers that they have, and they flag things that they would like to share in our weekly meeting. So when people rock up, I already know what you've done for the week, Eric, but you're just going to tell me the highlight, the most important bit of contextually adding information. So I'm like, okay, that's really important information. I've got that. Plus, I know the 25 other things you've done this week. So it's a high value, and that's a decision advantage meeting. So we're all going in there primed. You don't have to tell me, you created 700 Jira tickets. Like, really, I don't even care. We're talking about what matters for everyone in the studio to hear. So again, that is just a way of showing a discipline about how you work, where that trickles down into not just our team weekly meetings, but one-on-ones with one another, decisions that we have to make with our teams. People show up primed with the information that they need to make the decision, and that information is an advantage. So those two metrics of decision velocity, like how frequently are we actually making decisions and moving forward, good or bad, but we're making decisions. And decision advantage, how informed are we when we're making those decisions, both before the meeting and follow-up, so you don't get into this reconstructing context all the time. It's alive, it's living, and people are pushing the context forward and improving it through iteration, experimentation, learning, all that good stuff. That's what creates high-performance organizations, where you have this human judgment paired with the machine intelligence to give us that decision advantage. And for me, this is the only way to work now. I know we feel the same. And that's what we're pushing forward now, I think, in terms of not just productivity, but performance.
That's great, Barry. I'm going to repeat those two words you just said: decision velocity and decision advantage. And I'm just trying to take your comments from your book and apply it to what I've learned here at Nobody Studios in the past few months since I've joined. And I'm going to break it down in different points, and feel free to react and see if you agree or disagree. But one is the homework you do. I think I have a timeline, right? Before, during, and after the meeting, right? Have you done your homework before? And it should be clear, setting expectations. And as we get into our weekly meetings, right? You, me, Barry, yourself, me, and others on the team, right? Once we get in that rhythm and we know the structure of the meeting, we know to do our homework ahead of time, make good sound decisions quickly, not burn out the whole hour and just, look at data and not really know what the heck's going on. But then afterwards, take clear actions. And as you know, we've already implemented some AI tools to help track our meetings, log those to-dos and so forth. So that's pretty exciting. But I'm going to actually take your learning and apply it to, I don't know, 3 or 4 companies ago when I ran a very large business unit, the marketing actually of a multi-billion-dollar business. I remember one person just sharing data for 45 minutes. I'm like, to your earlier point, like, what is the actionable intelligence, right? What is the decision? Like, just don't, regurgitate lots of data and throw it out there. Like, make our meetings productive. And I think the other thing we got to watch out for, Barry, are those recurring meetings that somebody just loves to set up, right? Just to kind of hang out and talk. And, so I'm very careful with my time, as I'm sure you are. So that's another thing, a challenge we got to watch out for. Anything else you'd like to add? Yeah.
Yeah, and they're all measurable. Yeah, and this is the thing, Eric, it's measurable. Like even if you just start with a piece of paper for the week and look at your calendar and say what percentage are recurring meetings? Do I need them? When I'm in a meeting, how quickly do we get to a decision point? Is it like 100% of the meeting? Is it like 25% of the meeting? And then also you can check decision reversals. Like, did we make a decision, turned out it was the wrong one? Or did we make a decision that helped us go forward, and now we're making the next decision? These are all like small bits of information that you can capture even without sophisticated systems. Then getting to the point like we obviously have now in our studio is because we transcribe and capture every single conversation as data, becomes a data asset. And then that data asset is just moving information around. What were the 10 actions? Put them into our task management system, assign them to the right people. Like, we're spending more of our time, and this is a fun question maybe for the audience, is what percentage of your time do you think is on creative problem solving work versus time-suck administration tasks? And typically when we ask people that, most people go to the Pareto principle. They sort of go 80-20, right? I get 20% of my time's on creative work. 80% is this time-suck admin that's necessary for me to be successful. But with these tools, when you start to understand how you do your best work, for me, talking is a huge part, right? You and I are in a lot of meetings, we're talking. So all that talking is actually information that we're generating. It's valuable information. It can help us make decisions faster. It can help us stay informed. The big tasks for us are our weekly meetings, our one-on-ones, our team, like time with the portfolio teams, like they're high leverage moments. So what are the tools that are going to help us, right? And so it's very easy for us to think about, well, meetings are really important with the teams. We talk a lot because that's what we're doing. So we talk, we've meetings. There's an obvious thing that we should have a transcription service in there to turn every conversation into an asset that we can leverage later. And we can leverage it just like in the meeting to create actions. I certainly leverage it at the end of the week to put all of my meetings into an LLM and ask it, what did I do well? What could I do better? How long did it take us to get to a decision? How could we move faster? This all stuff helps me get better, right? So this sort of and it's one of the other loops we talk a lot about from an executive function in the book, is this ability to capture, transcribe, synthesize, and act is a huge important part of how we work, both in the studio and I think people who are using these tools well. They know their natural traits, the tasks that they create disproportionate value, and then align tools that will help them, augment them, if you will. And that's sort of the magic, I think, that we're seeing where, again, you go past AI as a productivity to like, that's performance, or how I like to think about even better, it's presence. Like, we show up to meetings less stressed, more calm, greater clarity about what needs to be done. So we're better people. We're better versions of ourselves in high stakes moments. And that, I think, is a powerful place to be as a leader, because you're going to make better decisions. If you're calm, you're prepared, you're present, right? You're listening. And that is an amazing place, I think, and really the promise of what this book lays out a path to get to.
That's great. And I'm comparing it to some experiences over my life. And I love your phrase there, you come calm and prepared, right? And everybody does. It's not who has the strongest will, who can shout the loudest, who's the fanciest presenter, right? I mean, you're just coming prepared with that data. And that's awesome. And if I had to push you some more, it's not, as you know, not just the meetings, the mechanisms to make those more efficient, which is definitely key. Maybe we could raise it up maybe like a company level, right? It's like a operating system, right? It's not, I think you argue in the book, it's not a technology problem. It's a leadership operating system problem. Can you talk to me a little bit about that and why it might be broken and how leaders work?
Yeah, well, again, if we take, and anyone listening can sort of think about their typical week, right? I think somewhere in the region of 64% of our week are meetings for most executives. That's sort of 3 times what it was in the 1950s, by the way. So your calendar is literally like a Tetris sort of screen, it's just like all of these things. And so this meeting-centric culture paired with leaders who are used to making decision on instinct alone, right? Most leaders have risen to the top because they have good instinct. They have tenure in a business. They've been they've been in the industry for 25 years. All of these sorts of very just human traits, which again are fantastic. But we're now in a world where it's human plus machine is better outcome. So human on your own, yes, you may be a gifted, foresight seeing, visionary person. But if you're just relying on instinct alone, you're up against someone who's instinct plus machine intelligence, right? If you leave the machines to their own devices, well, then you've given up control, essentially. And I think Deloitte had this where they, had consultants just randomly generating reports and handing them over to the Australian workplace government and cost them $500,000 in fees because they got pinged on it. So you can't have human on your own has a certain performance level. Machine on its own, you've given up the outcome. So human plus machine is you have better outcomes, right? And so you have to start thinking about your leadership system. What's the sort of judgment infrastructure are you creating to help you be the best version of yourself? And that might be how you capture every interaction you have and leverage it later. It might be when you're making decisions, being very aware of what information you need. And certainly one thing I love most about these tools is using them as a thinking partner. So what I tend to do is if I know I have a high stakes meeting coming up, what I do is I prepare what I think I want to present. And the first person I show it to is not a team member. I actually start debating it back and forth with an LLM. I ask it these disconfirming questions like, where are the gaps in my thinking here? Give me the 3 potential scenarios, good, bad, unlikely, catastrophic. What were some of the countermeasures I should have in place for those? Eric loves asking me great challenging questions about, data and how I found the research to back this up. What are 2 bits of research that will support my argument? So again, when I show up, it's not like I'm trying to show up to sort of put other people down or be the smartest person in the room. I'm prepared. I'm actually confident. I have clarity. And sometimes I actually rock up and go, hey, everybody, I was going to present this, but I spent 20 minutes with an LLM and it told me this idea sucks. So I didn't even bother bringing it to you because I'm going to go back and iterate it for next week. I'm not going to waste your time, and that's a gift. And that is for when you are in these sort of teams where you care about how you show up to your team members, it shows. And then it raises the bar about how you treat and respect one another with each other's time and intellectual capacity, that human capacity. And that's really special because when someone taps me in the shoulder and can I pick your brain and they ask me how to tie their shoelaces, that's frustrating. But if they tap me on the shoulder and go, here's something I've thought deeply about, and I really need your expertise on this part of it, I love that. That's showing, thoughtfulness and respect for your team members. And that's a great place to work, right? And you're smiling because I know you're like, yeah, this is great when that happens, right?
Exactly. Makes it so much more productive, the meetings, exciting, and you can really raise the bar a lot higher, right? If you walk in, everybody prepared, and you've tested out your pitch with some AI.
But
That's
you're
awesome.
doing this,
And
right?
I'm
Talk a
making it
little like
connect.
I see you doing this week over week, right? Like you're out there talking to people, sharing what the studio is about, and that is a feedback mechanism. So maybe share a little bit of what you've been doing to prepare for that, because it's been great
Yeah.
watching you go through your process.
Yeah, well, thanks, Barry. And a couple things. I just thought of one idea based on what you just said earlier. But yeah, so I've been talking to a lot of patent lawyers. Do I know anything about patent law? Of course not. But I've done a lot of research ahead of time. I have a lot of friends who are attorneys, not patent attorneys. So I talk to them first. They introduce me to all their friends that are patent attorneys. But obviously, coming into those meetings, very humble, of course. Just getting advice, right? People are always open up for giving advice, but it's a return favor too. They get to learn about some of the latest AI capabilities. But to your point, I think I'm relating it back to your earlier point. It's clear, and this is pretty cool. It's one of our products, Valify. It helps attorneys be more efficient, effective. Be better, use their time, show up better prepared. To your earlier point, Barry, like why spend hours doing some drudgery work, which is still necessary, but you can allow our AI product to do that. Look for patents out there, right? Rather than spending hours, 5, 10, 20 hours searching, you can spend less time searching and more time raising yourself up to do the more strategic analyzing. But here's one thing I've learned, which you kind of hit on pretty briefly. You're not outsourcing everything to AI and right? You said that nice compliment of it's yourself with the AI. Clearly, you're not going to let the AI do all this patent searching for you. You got to stay in control of the process, right? So anyway, maybe I took that a little off the course there from what your book was saying, but to me, that's so key with this AI. How do you embed it, meld it into existing workflows so people are still in control, right? You don't want to just outsource and say, "Ooh, I hope for the best." So anyway, what are your thoughts on some of the products we've been developing, like a Valify?
Yeah, so like it's one of the most fun things to do, right? Is to have an idea and try and bring it into the world and see how it impacts and is affected by the world as you bring it into it. It's a gift to go through that process again and again, and that's what drew me to the studio in so many ways, right? I had been working across almost like all these disparate things. I was, sitting on boards of startups. I was doing advice for large enterprises. It was like this scattered portfolio of all these different things going on. And I never really felt like I could really just hone all of my energy and my experience and relationships into this just a place where it was building equity in a single place, but it's a portfolio, so it's diversified. And that's, when I came across the studio, Lee DeGally, who was on a board with me for a company called Agile Craft that we sold to Atlassian. And he introduced me to Mark McNally, and Mark was there at talking about this thing called a venture studio, which at the time I'd never heard the word before. And I was like, is this an incubator? Is this a VC? Oh, it seems to be a little bit of both, but not, and different. But what really sort of drew me to this idea is that we could create a portfolio of bets across a domain that is moving faster than we've ever moved, that is changing rapidly, but build early stage companies to sort of capture those opportunities quickly and then exit those companies fast. And to me, that just matched where the market is at, where the moment in time we're at. It's like building these massive 14-year unicorns is sort of a mug's game, really, in my opinion. What you need to be able to do is quickly identify opportunities, go after it, capture that niche, scale it quickly, and then exit it. And on to the next idea, And that's really the idea of speed. It's about high velocity. Again, I love velocity in decision making. I love velocity in company creation. And then I just think it meets the moment where, you're seeing lots of smaller teams being able to have outsized impact. The cost of capital efficiency has gone down. When we started the studio even, we used to think we'd have to have 10, 12 people in a team. Today we're like 2, 4, maybe 5 if it's really flying. And that's great because the context as well stays smaller. It's easier to make decisions faster in smaller teams. So there's a whole load of just natural nuance that's playing into the favor of the studio, which I'm delighted about. And that's both what inspired me to join the studio, but has, again, a lot of this decision and judgment infrastructure is inspired by our work in the studio. From personal experience to working with the portfolio companies, that's actually what's got me excited, And again, with books, for me, it's just a capture of reflections. That's how I think about what have I learned? Can I write it down and share? And again, anyone who will see, I post every month in the studio. I'm always sharing what we're learning, like you are too, Eric, obviously as well. Like we want to build in the open. We want to share the lessons. And really the book is just an encapsulation of those experiences, both in the studio personally and with the companies we've worked with. And that for me is exciting to share that back with the community. So more people become aware of what we're doing, how we're doing it, and whether they choose to use those lessons to improve themselves or it excites them to want to be part of the studio, we'll openly sort of welcome them and invite them, to follow yourself, myself, the studio, Mark, all these great people in the studio, because we're sharing. That's what we're doing. And, you can be part of it.
That's right. That's awesome, Barry. And if I had to echo one of the things you said or emphasize, you mentioned velocity. I've done several posts, as you know, just sheer speed. And to me, that is such a competitive weapon, right? Having worked at some very large companies, we're in these little quick, fast boats, right? Where you can build a company with just a couple people in months versus, hundreds of people over years, as we all know now with AI. But it's so powerful, right? It creates momentum. It's a snowball effect going downhill. You just get greater feedback, to my earlier point that we just talked about, right? Talking to real customers, understanding their real pain points and developing that product and getting that feedback loop going really fast. You can fine tune and find that truth faster, find that product faster. So that's pretty cool.
It is. And can I say one thing though, that you inspired me with when you were talking about speed in the studio? And what was really, I think one thing a lot of people miss about speed is it actually makes it safer. Because if you're fast and you make a mistake, you can rectify mistakes quicker. So this idea of learning, I think, is important. It's not just all good. Some things we learn mean it's bad. But if you have speed, you can respond. And I think that was one thing, again, that you've certainly talked about that is a reminder for me that it's our ability to quickly stop bad investments is also a superpower. It's not just we're fast at creating great things, because not everything we create is great. And we've had plenty of companies and ideas that have started in the studio that we were massively excited about, but they turned out that the market situation changed, the technology wasn't right, the team wasn't right, but we were able to, at speed, get to a decision point to say, stop this investment. And I think that, again, is another superpower that you certainly reminded me on, with some of the examples you were sharing around speed and why it's so important for us.
Yeah. And if I can keep running with your thought there, speed and quickly figuring out if something's good or bad. And then also, as you know, which I love that phrase, I didn't come up with it. Maybe you did, Barry, but Frugressive, right? Frugal and aggressive. It's also that speed to get to each milestone, right? To verify as you scale a company that it's still good, right? It's still on track and it can scale and it can hunt. And so, anyway, I'm thinking of speed in through each of those milestones. Hey, one thing in your book, you talk at a lot of conferences, talked to a lot of CEOs and leaders. What do you think in your case studies that you've seen, what separates leaders who succeed with the AI from those who struggle?
Yeah, so one of the fun things I did last July is I have a mailing list of about 15,000 people on it, and there's about 5,000 execs on it. So I emailed all of the execs and asked them, first of all, what do they do? How are they using AI? How do they want to learn AI? This was really interesting. And what do they think is the biggest ROI from it, right? So the breakdown is pretty interesting. There's about 25% CEO, 25% C-suite, 50% VP, just to simplify. But what was really fascinating is that this sort of blew my mind because this never happens. They literally said 34% of them wanted to learn AI one-on-one, or another 37 wanted to learn in small groups. And literally nobody wanted to learn in a classroom big environment or like at their own pace, which again is very rare. That's like an inverted stat of what people typically say. So this sort of got me curious. So what I did then is, after I'd reached out, I looked through the list of everyone who replied and said, right, I want to learn one-on-one. And I picked 10 of them, people who I just know are natural experimenters, normally just like dive into things. And I emailed them all and says, look, let's talk. I want to know why you voted for this, why you're feeling like this. And what became very apparent just even from that early group, first of all, there's a tremendous pressure to apply AI to everything at the moment. Like that, it's just, there's no strategy. It's just, we just spent $30 a month on 5,000 people to have OpenAI license. So there's $1 million odd quid going out the door. We need to see a return for this, right? Like boards are signing this stuff off on a whim. It's absolutely crazy. And then you have these execs who are like, well, hang on, I know I'm smart, I know I'm capable, I'm doing this job, but I've never used this technology and I don't tacitly understand it. And yet I feel like I have to, or I should understand it. Now, you know this yourself as well. It's lonely at the top. It's lonely. What's worse than just feeling lonely at the top is feeling incompetent and lonely at the top, especially when the market and all these companies with their massive marketing budgets are telling you that you're too slow, you're late, you're going to lose your job, the robots are coming. So there's this FOMO stuff flying around. You've got leaders who are bright but feel incompetent because they don't have time or space to experiment with this technology. And then there's pressure from a board to say, we just signed $1 million a month licensing agreement with, pick your favorite provider. That's where most execs are sitting right now, So this was fascinating to me then to sort of go, right, so what you need is a safe space to learn this stuff. And it's not like you're not capable. It's just you don't have any time. They don't have the get stuff done or the like do AI work, because I know you do this. We talk about this a lot. Every day you almost have another half hour in your calendar where you're playing around, experimenting with stuff, right? And so again, teaching them to sort of say, right, let's just have an hour a week where you're just going to like try. And that's really what the book offers these folks. It's showing them a pathway that they can take bite-sized steps into practically hands-on using these tools and understanding how they can help them. And what's powerful about that is when you're an exec, and there's a great case study with Andrew Phillips, who's the CTO of Skyscanner. Now, Skyscanner is like 160 million people looking at it a day. I couldn't even think of how much data they're managing. He's the CTO. Everyone looks at him like, how do you use AI? And for him, his story was great in the book where he just talked a little bit about how he just did these small little experiments, and he would tell the team, he didn't expect to be the smartest AI person. He's like, he told them, oh, look, I'm going on this journey to see how I can use it. Does it make my day better? I'll try it for a board prep meeting. I'll try it to get a piece of data to help me inform a decision I want. And he was open with his team what he was learning, but also informing himself of what's good or bad or limiting about some of these tools. So when he's then talking to the data scientists or the design lead, he's coming from a place of practical hands-on experience and thought. And it's not like he's telling people what to do, but he has context about what these tools are good at and what they're not so good at. And again, that's just one of the great case studies. I also, with Stephen Franchetti, who's the CIO of Slack, he just moved to Samsara. A couple of years ago, we set up this working group together where we invited 200 executives from Fortune 500s to join a Slack group with us. And we used to run like a Reddit-style upvoting where people could talk about challenges of remote work, new AI tools, and we'd host these sort of bi-weekly sessions. And anyone could come and sort of share their experience. It wasn't like Stephen being the, hey, I know it all, or I was certainly not that person. But we could help orchestrate these conversations with other leaders who were going through this journey. And again, these are just a couple of the case studies. There's other ones from American Airlines, from .work, HSBC, Progeny, all these great companies that are either listed on the NASDAQ or growing at a rapid pace, or really, it's been a pleasure to do that with our learnings from Nobody Studios. So it's sort of been a great sort of experience personally to capture all this, as I have every meeting for the last 7.5 years, and use that to synthesize my thoughts and create action in the book. So hopefully that's going to inspire more people as well.
Awesome. Hey, something you said brought up two thoughts. One, as you know, I think personal experimentation, which is what you're saying, is definitely much more powerful than the top-down AI mandates from on high, right? You just got to roll up your sleeves and get in there. And for some reason, I don't know why, I just thought of this like 8 months ago.
You're great at it. You just do it.
Yeah, I just like to experiment. Yeah, just roll up your sleeves, get in there and get dirty. And I created, I'm trying to keep my German fresh, right? That's where I was born and raised, in Germany. And so I created a voice agent in German. So I'm talking it to German. Meanwhile, my family members think I've lost my marbles, what little I have left. But anyway, that's just fun, right? You get in there, create a voice agent, talk to it in another language. I know it's fun. But, I'm tying together something you just said. Clearly, experimentation on your own is very powerful, right? I mean, there's nothing like actually doing it versus just, theorizing about it. But second, what I'm kind of tying it back to our venture studio here, our AI venture studio, Nobody Studios. To me, the power, tying it back to the studio, is you can experiment on your own. You can share with others. And now, unlike other forms of growing companies, we all have the same goal in mind, to exit companies at a regular pace. And here is not immediately obvious to many people. Investors understand it, but as each exit of a company happens, every founder gets paid, every employee and every investor, meaning if, Barry, your company is closer to the goal line, I don't know if you soccer, football, whatever analogy, I'm going to help you, right? I'm going to help you get it over the goal line and win, because I'm going to share in those winnings. So there's something about that teamwork, which I think is unique about Nobody Studios, that helps in sharing those learnings, those AI learnings, those AI experimentations. Is that fair? Yeah.
Right on. Yeah. Again, one of our fundamentals is that our incentives are all aligned. Whether you're an operator, an investor, a contributor, everybody wins if anyone wins. And that's special. That is, I do not know of any other incentive structure on the planet where if there's a group of people working in a portfolio, all on individual tasks, but also contributing to the studio overall. And as you said, one person wins, everybody wins. And to me, I think that's a very unique model for an age where it's just massive speed, massive disruption. Nobody knows how this is going to sort of play out. And yet you can have many sort of bets on the table in that game. And again, that you cannot do that anywhere else. You can't do it in VC. You can pick one startup and hope that that's the 1 in 1 million that turns into something. Or, you can be part of Nobody Studio, where we'll have 100 bets on the table at any one time, and you're just waiting for one to win, and the next one to win, and the next set of ones, and then we'll have 1,000 companies on the table. It's optionality, and I love that.
Yeah. And Barry, since I joined at the beginning of January, I've had so many people reach out, brand new people, cold outreach, plus friends. And a common theme, no surprise, is founders want to be part of something bigger, right? Second, founders usually have more than just one idea. Third, as you collaborate with others, you think of bigger ideas, better ideas you would have never thought of on your own. So that network effect, that power of multiple people, it's just so enticing for founders to co-build with us. But anyway, back to your book. We're winding down here to our last 5 minutes or so. But who should read this book and who shouldn't? Or, just give us some perspective.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So the book is definitely designed for CEOs, C-suite, founders and leaders, operators like ourselves, right, who are literally responsible for getting personal performance, but also role modeling it to inspire their teams to change their companies. You said it yourself, AI transformation doesn't happen with mandates. It happens with people role modeling and experimenting themselves. So this book is definitely for you. If you're like a CTO, like an engineer, an agentic engineer, you'll read this book and get some of the principles, but you're already using this technology day to day, right? So this book is not for you trying to write super sophisticated agent orchestrations, if that's what you're looking for. This is really the how-to guide. It's a leadership operating system. It starts with your personal traits. What are your natural habits and behaviors where creates your best performance? What are then the tasks that you can identify in your week that create outsized value? And then what are going to be the tools that help you get the most performance out of that? And then how do you turn those tools into an AI stack supported by a judgment infrastructure of understanding clear outcomes, metrics, information you need to make the decisions, and then managing that system to see if you're actually making decisions at high velocity and with advantage. And that's really where you get this, what I feel every day, the compounding effect of human instinct with machine intelligence. And that is where we stay in the loop. That's where we get the best outcomes. And really, for me, that's where we make the best decisions.
A couple more questions. So if a CEO is watching this and takes one step this week to build, quote, decision advantage, what should it be?
Well, again, not jumping to a tool. The first question I would ask them is, how do they naturally work? And ask themselves, do they write things down? Do they talk a lot? And how can they capture that and capture it in a way that they can reuse it at the end of their week? So if you're a typer, so one of the case studies in the book is Pete, who's the CEO of Progeny. He was the former CFO of WebMD, grew that company to obviously massive scale. All his life, Pete has recorded everything in a Word doc. All his one-on-ones, all his meetings, all his actions. Now that Word doc is great for Pete because it's just Pete stuff. But when I started working with Pete and I was like, right, well, let's start putting this information in a place where you can transcribe it and synthesize it. Let's start putting every week that you capture all your notes. Let's put all your notes into an LLM and let's start asking questions. What decisions keep coming up again? What patterns are you finding you're having with one-on-ones with your teams? What ways could you track and synthesize what people are doing? How could you send actions to people so they know what you want them to do and how they're prepared for the next meeting? So as someone who's deeply analytical and typed to get all his thoughts together, that was a great way for him to just start using his natural behavior of typing all his notes out, putting that, transcribing it, synthesizing it in an LLM, and then taking action, right? Both for his team members and himself. I'm a talker. For me, talking, I was like instantly, talking is where I generate loads of information. One-on-ones is my high leverage. I need a transcription service in my meetings, so I capture all the information. So I'm present. And then to your point, the get stuff done at the end of the day, my get stuff done is like literally 15 minutes. I go through every call I've been on. I have a synthesis routine that sort of says, what were the actions? Who were the owners? Make sure I understand them all. I verify them. And then I can make sure all my follow-ups go to people literally in 15 minutes. Like people get freaked out sometimes, Eric, when they meet with me and we've a half an hour meeting and it's done in 15. And then 3 minutes later, I've sent them a summary of the meeting with the actions, the owners, the key teams, a couple of quotes that really exemplified what the intent of our session was. And then I'm on to the next thing. And they're just like, Barry, how did you do that? I thought you were really listening to me. And I was like, I was. I'm just pairing all of this now with my machine intelligence and like getting the best out of me, the best out of the machine, and then we're moving. And people want to work with you. Like they love that. They like that performance experience. So again, this is, I think, the way the path is going. You can stick doing the same things that you've always done and hope to improve, or you can unlearn maybe the way you have worked and sort of relearn this new way of human plus machine intelligence and really get extraordinary results.
Excellent. I always say one more question and I think of like 3 more, but 5 years from now,
We have to do another one in a month or something like that, Eric, and then we can share.
I know, it's getting late night here, East Coast. Anyway, hey, 5 years from now, what will separate the companies that thrive from those that stall?
Well, it does come down to this human plus machine intelligence, right? Like if you are relying on human instinct alone, if you're stuck in meeting-centric cultures, if you're not seeing every interaction as an information asset that you can leverage later, some companies are. We've both been through many of these cycles. I remember the mobile cycle where people were like, yeah, no one's going to want to move around with a device. I remember cloud computing where people was like, no, I'm never going to want to put my data center in the cloud. Are you crazy? We're at another moment here where it's like, no, the machines, I'm never going to let them help me make decisions. They're not developed enough. So I've seen this again and again. And again, we've said this. The people who succeed are those who roll up their sleeves and experiment and learn by actually doing the work. Those who sort of sit there and rely on past systems, the way that they've always done it, their instinct alone, they're just going to struggle. And they are already struggling because, as you see, there's a case study of HSBC in the book, these graduates showing up who know nothing about the domain, who have no tender, but they know how to get information fast and at high quality to inform decisions and learn along the way. So literally within 6 or 12 months, they're outperforming executives who've been in the role for 20 years, have tender, have time, have instinct, but they don't have the best information because they don't know how to get it, or they're relying on this manual, pass it up the levels, pass it back down the levels type research, insight about how the company's performing, where grads are just like, jump on. And Joe Narenia is a great case study of this in the studio. He was the COO of global markets for HSBC. He used to sit down with grads every time they came into the company, and he was like, here's stuff I'm working on. How would you solve it? And just see what they did, and like that, again, is a great cultural artifact in these companies where you have leaders at the top learning from newbies at the bottom, but they're experts in different tools or technologies, and you can learn from them. So, I think you have to park the ego and like get stuck in and have some fun and fail and share what you tried and what didn't work. Or am I thinking about this right? How are you doing it? Again, Andrew Phillips is the CTO of Skyscanner. That's exactly what he did. So the book's packed with all these like fun, examples of people who've learned in the open, tried, tested, made mistakes, shared it. So I'm hoping, again, just like we continue to do that in the studio, that will sort of inspire people to, take action and get on, the curve, I think, that's going in the exponential direction rather than the linear one.
That's right. Hey, something you just said reminded me, I love your comment about, if I understood it correctly, somebody high up in an organization meeting with a newbie, right? Is that what you just said?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And just a share experience with you, every month I go to a major university to left unnamed where I live, but it's a major university. But I mentor these, quote, kids. I hate to say kids, but they're, sophomores, juniors in college. And I share, some marketing and sales wisdom. They're like, wow. Little do they know, I'm learning as much as from them. No, like, seriously, they're right. Like when I was a junior in college, I could barely find the classroom and figure out how to do my homework. They're running I'm not making this up, 6- and 7-figure businesses, like up and running AI businesses. I'm like, great. Wow, that's amazing. So, but you're right. I share some experiences in scaling companies. They're sharing some of the latest tools. Amazing. That can be fun working together like that. Hey, truly the last question. I got to believe another book is in store. Come on, Barry, give us a hint. What do you want to tackle next?
Well, like I said to you, I'm dyslexic. I have a solid history in D- in English literature. So I am not a writer, but I have a system that allows me to synthesize what I learn from the work that I do. And really this book is, I guess, that synthesis of the last sort of 5 to 6 years. And I believe when you put this stuff out there, it becomes a platform for the next sort of set of things. You find people that care about the same ideas, that get it. It's a lightning rod, for people to come together. Just like the studio is a lightning rod for builders to come together and be part of something. So I think the next book, Eric, will probably be you, me, Mark, maybe the whole leadership team in Newbies Studios, all like just synthesizing the lessons that we're sharing really every week. Like we're putting everything we're learning out there, and really a book is just an encapsulation of all that. So It's more like I'm excited to see what you and I write as our, nobody knows how to build companies. I think Mark wants to write a book called that because it's so much fun with our name, Nobody Studios, to just play with puns and so forth on it.
Right.
So yeah, maybe that's the next book. And maybe it's not even 5 years. Maybe it's 2. Who knows?
Maybe it's Well, everybody, thank you for joining. This is Eric Baxley, Chief Marketing Officer of Nobody Studios. Today, what a great conversation with Barry O'Reilly, co-founder of Nobody Studios, and also author of this great new book out, Artificial Organization. So thank you very much for your time today, Barry. Let's do this again in a month or two on some other topics. Thank you.
Love it. And thanks, Eric, for, really showing up in terms of building in the open. I think you're just a great example of, again, someone who's had an outsized impact on the studio in the time we've already been here. And again, encouraging us and showing us how to share our stories better. So I'm super grateful for you. And, the humility of your questions. And today, you've so much experience. I know everyone's only got a glimpse into it, but believe me, you're going to learn a whole lot more from Eric. So make sure you follow him, and you're going to find some great content over the coming months and weeks ahead.
Awesome. Thanks, Barry. Thanks, everybody, for watching.